didn't pick up. Apparently, I'm going to fucking break the damn thing. Ugh, I got that all over me. What's up, creepers and geekers? Chris, the Atari Creep. How's everyone doing today? Happy Monday to each and every one of you. I know a lot of you guys dread this day, but you know what? Let's talk about something fun. Let's talk about something Atari. I was going to post this video last week, and I just never got around to actually making the video itself. And then over the weekend, because the 3rd was the Switch's 1-year anniversary, a whole bunch of people are putting up a 1-year later video on the Nintendo Switch. I don't have a Nintendo Switch, nor do I care about one right now. What I care about is black, orange, and I wish there was some wood grain on this thing. I'm going to have to pop this thing apart and customize it. I don't know. But long story short, I've had this in my personal possession just about a year. I got it in either March or April of 2017, though this did come out in 2016 in November. So it's well over its year in existence, so to speak. And there's been another model since, which I still don't own. But since I've had it in my personal possession for a year, I've been able to carry it around, play it, see how it held up, see if it was worth even purchasing at its purchase price. I felt like I would just have another quick overview of the unit itself, and then talk about my personal pros and cons with owning the damn thing, and see how it's held up basically overall. So let's just get right into the unit itself. We'll talk about it. So the first thing I think we should discuss is the build quality itself. This does not feel like a cheap unit. It feels like it costs as much as it did, about $40. It's not the highest end thing in the world, but by no stretch of the imagination is this thing a cheap, poorly made product. It is held up. As you see in the beginning of the video, I dropped it in my initial introduction, which I went on to do a second or third or 12th take of that. And you can see here, there's been no damage to it. It hasn't busted, hasn't even so much as scratched up. And that would almost lead you to believe that I haven't really played with this thing, but I bring it with me all the time. This past weekend, we had dance competition with one of the kids, and I brought this with me, and in between pauses and in between their routines, I played it. So overall, the build construction is great. It's solid. It feels good in the hand. I wish it were a little bit bigger because I have sausage fingers, but that's just a personal gripe. Doesn't mean shit at the end of the day. The buttons still feel exactly the same. They haven't deteriorated or gotten worse. And again, I have given this thing hours and hours and hours of playtime. One more thing on construction. The power button and the volume button. I didn't think the volume button would fail at all, but I'm surprised that the power button is still on there, and it still works. Like I said, I got big fingers, so it's tough turning this thing on and off, but I make do with what I got, and it works, and I'm surprised that hasn't snapped off, but that is still there. Screen still looks nice, and as you can kind of see there, I still have the film over it. I try to do that as long as I possibly can, just to protect the screen itself. And yes, it's got its fair share of smudges, as you can see in the light. But in person, it doesn't hinder any gameplay. So overall, this thing was built fantastic for what it is, and I couldn't be any happier with it. So let's touch on the battery life of this thing. Does the battery last long enough for you to enjoy? Well, in my instance, yes, it has. Though it has varied from time to time. I've never actually had this thing just quit on me in the middle of gameplay. With a few exceptions of me knowing that the battery was low, we don't have any indication as far as battery life. We just know that when this light lights up, it's going to be time to plug it in pretty soon. And pretty much when that light comes on, your unit's going to be dead soon. So as soon as it comes on, you might as well just give up on your game, plug her in, and move on. But battery life has varied. Not dramatically, but enough for me to notice. Sometimes, you get some solid... Atari's one of those things where you just plug in a game and you just play for a little bit. It's not really an hours and hours and hours kind of thing. So for what it is, the battery life is perfect. But I can't give you a solid number, 4 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, because sometimes I've been rocking on this thing when I know it's fully charged and got maybe 3 or 4 hours out of it. whereas other times it just never seems to want to fucking die. So the battery life on this thing has been kind of varied back and forth, but it's perfect for what it is. But overall, the battery life has been fine for what it is. So next, and possibly last, let's talk about the quality of the sound and the visuals from this thing. Now, I know what you're saying, well, it's Atari, Chris, but I'm not talking about the games themselves. I'm talking about the quality of the build and how they reproduce the visuals and the sound of these games from 40 friggin' years earlier. And for the most part, there's really been no problem. I haven't noticed a dramatic difference between the console and this itself, like you can with a lot of plug-and plays and such like that. When I first opened this damn thing, if you recall, I had some issues with some sounds, and you can still kind of hear it. It's this weird electronic hum, and when you open up a game, let's see if I can't, it crackles. I hope you heard that. I'll do that again, just in case. Which bugged me at first, and I think that was more of a, we just spent almost $50 on this thing. I think it was $40, and I thought it was busted, But it turns out that might just be, the varying quality of the speaker itself. So, but overall, this thing, as far as reproducing the visual and sounds of Atari, I haven't noticed anything that's distracting or something that would make it a deal breaker. I think it is what it is, and it works just fine. So the last thing I want to talk about is whenever you do one of these year later reviews, especially on like a video game console, the initial idea is to talk about, was it worth it to pick it up? And a year later, is it still supported in a way that it was worth picking up? Initial release of the Switch was the software library. Would it justify you spending the $300 to pick up the damn thing, and then another $50, $60 on each game to bring this thing home and play it? And more so in the future, did they continue to support a quality library, and do they have plans to do that for the future? And with the Switch, it seems like yes, yes, and yes all the way around. Now, with the Atari Portable, we obviously can't talk about that. This is a console that started in 1977 and had a running life until about 1988, early 90s, something to that effect. I can't remember exactly. Excuse me. So there's not really much we could talk about as far as its library and expandability and what have you. But on the plus side, we do have homebrews that come out. And there is a way to expand this thing, especially through the SD card slot. Now, it took me about a half a year to get an SD card in here because of laziness and other things. But I finally did. And I think that is the reason why this thing is more than worth owning. We'll get to that in my final thoughts. But the cool thing about this is from day one, the cool cats over at Atari Age, their forums, they've been on it. And there's a lot of games that weren't compatible with this as far as putting it on an SD card. And at least even to this day, once a week, a new list is being put up, revised, in a download file for you to easily just put onto an SD card and slot into the machine, of games that once were incompatible, and for some reason, maybe it'd be the way it was named or whatever, they were updating that and they're fixing that. So that's, I guess, kind of the same. But new things are being worked out all the time for these things, and especially with the new model, I'm hearing that it was a lot more compatible out of the box with a lot of files, Atari game files. And like I said, there's always homebrews coming out. And a lot of times they're free to download, so you can just slap them on here, and hopefully they work. And if they don't, well, I guarantee you some cat over at the Atari Age forums should sure get it to work. But I will say that the golden feature, I'm going to turn that down because the hum is pretty loud here. The golden feature of this thing is the SD slot. I initially wanted the SD card for this game alone. This is my favorite port of Space Invaders, including the arcade machine itself. I would play this all day before I would play the arcade one, even if it was on free play. But I have 103 pages with 5 games for each page, and I'm sure there's tons more I could put on there. I'm actually doing a detailed list of it right now, what I have on here, because I don't know what games are on what page. I can't remember, but the SD card thing is a must-have, and it's what has mainly been making this thing more enjoyable. When I first got it, yes, I played the games that were on here, the classics, Asteroids, Bowling. Believe it or not, I played bowling a lot on this thing. But once that SD card came in, it just expanded the world of Atari in your hands. And it just made it even that much more worth it. So I think for the price, as long as you get an SD card in there, whether you have someone put it together for you or you do it yourself, I really think that's what makes this thing the most amazing handheld that has ever existed. So after all of that, would I recommend the Atari Flashback Portable by AtGames a year later? Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I would. Even if you're not an Atari fan, so to speak, you don't collect for the system. A lot of times people will say, well, if Atari and that age of games aren't your thing, I wouldn't recommend this to you. It's more of a niche thing. I think that this is cheap enough and small enough and portable enough to where even if you don't like collecting Atari, but you like to play a game once in a while, it's worth having, especially if you have the little cable that connected to the TV. I know a lot of people aren't going to walk around with an Atari in their pocket like me, but I will be honest with you. This is kind of like a pseudo dream product. I've always wanted to be able to play Atari on the go. I mean, you get your 3DSs and all other portables that have compilations from Atari, but there was always something a little off about it. Whereas this seems almost spot on, you know. AtGames really fucking hit the ball out of the park with this bad boy. Ever since I saw Ben Heck make that monstrosity of an Atari Portable, well, you can put cartridges in his. And I'm okay not having a cartridge slot in something like this. I have my SD card, and that is more than enough, okay? This library is fucking huge. And I'm able to have it all in one tiny little thing. This thing fits in your pocket for on the go. And the quality has been great. I've sat on this thing. And even with my fat ass, it still hasn't cracked, broke, budged. Now, I'm sure there's a way you could shatter the damn thing. Overall, the quality's there, and it does exactly what it needs to do. And I couldn't be any more happier. Again, this is kind of like a dream product for me. Only because I love the Atari so much. But I don't think you have to love the Atari to enjoy owning this. So, guys, what are your thoughts? Do you have one? Do you think the same thing I do, or do you just keep it in a closet somewhere? Do you not give a shit? Do you think yours sucks? Go ahead and leave feedback. All feedback's positive to me. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the AtGames Atari Flashback Portable. Unfortunately, I don't have the 2017 model. I do apologize for that. I would love to butt them up together and see how they compare. Again, I think I read somewhere that it's a lot more compatible out of the box with a lot of these files. But either way, I haven't really had a need for it. I've been happy enough with this one where I haven't sought that one out. Maybe someday if I see one at a yard sale or on Craigslist for cheap, I'll pick it up just to throw it on the shelf somewhere. So guys, thanks as always so much for watching. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Makes this more fun, being honest with you. I mean, I'd still do it without you guys there, but it really makes it a little bit more worthwhile. So I really do appreciate each and every one of you, whether or not I mention it enough or not. So guys, I hope everyone's doing well. Again, happy Monday, beginning of a new week. And until next time, guys, take care. Bye-bye.